Welcome to the world of science function. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. The twin moons hung low in the crimson sky, their pale light casting long shadows across the jagged terrain of Arcturian Academy's outdoor combat arena. The air shimmered faintly, not with heat but with the faint static charge of the force fields encasing the arena. Cadets, spectators, and instructors alike crowded into the stands, their voices a chaotic mix of excitement and curiosity as the announcement boomed through the air. An elite alien rival, the undefeated Cytherian warrior Croth, had officially challenged the Academy's top human cadet, Lieutenant Nadia Crane. Nadia stood at the far end of the arena, her black cadet uniform clinging to her like a second skin, the glowing Academy insignia on her chest pulsing faintly with each heartbeat. She was calm on the outside, but her mind raced as she took in the scene before her. Croth, towering at over 7 feet, stood at the center of the arena, his 4 muscular arms crossed over his chest, his metallic blue skin gleaming under the artificial lights. His predatory grin revealed a row of sharp, serrated teeth, and his multiple eyes glimmered with anticipation. He hadn't just come to win, he'd come to humiliate. "Humans are weak," Croth declared, his voice echoing through the arena. "You have no place among the stars. I'll prove it today." The crowd erupted in murmurs. Some of the alien cadets from various species laughed and jeered, while the humans in the crowd exchanged nervous glances. Even the instructors, who normally maintained strict neutrality, whispered amongst themselves. Croth's reputation was well known, and his victory record was spotless. His species, the Cytherians, were bred for combat, enhanced by centuries of genetic engineering to be faster, stronger, and nearly impervious to injury. A human cadet defeating him seemed laughable at best. Nadia, however, refused to let the weight of the crowd's doubt crush her spirit. She straightened her shoulders and stepped forward, her boots clicking against the metallic ground. As she moved, she felt the gaze of thousands fixed on her, including her fellow cadets and her mentor, Commander Elias Varn, who sat in the front row with a grim expression. "Do you accept the challenge, Lieutenant Crane?" the automated voice of the arena AI asked, its tone devoid of emotion. "I do," Nadia replied, her voice steady. She didn't raise it to compete with the noise of the crowd, she didn't need to. Her calm confidence carried through the chaos, silencing the immediate vicinity. For Nadia, this wasn't just about pride or proving herself, it was about showing the Academy, her peers, and Croth himself that humanity was not to be underestimated. The AI's voice rang out again. "Combat will begin in 60 seconds. Contestants, prepare yourselves." Nadia's heart pounded as she activated her HUD visor, which slid down from the helmet she carried at her side. Instantly, tactical data filled her vision, Croth's vitals, his known abilities, and the environmental layout of the arena. She knew she couldn't match him in raw strength, but her strategy relied on agility, creativity, and precision. As the countdown began, Croth stretched his arms, each muscle flexing like coiled steel cables. He turned one of his eyes toward Nadia, a look of contempt flashing across his alien face. "You're brave, little human. I'll give you that. But bravery doesn't save you when you're broken on the ground." Nadia ignored him, her focus narrowing to the battlefield. She took a deep breath, mentally reviewing her training. The arena had a few environmental hazards, energy pits that could disable a combatant's shield for 30 seconds, magnetic fields that interfered with projectiles, and platforms that shifted unpredictably. She'd need to use all of it to her advantage. The arena's countdown hit 0, and a deafening alarm signaled the start of the fight. Croth wasted no time. He lunged forward with inhuman speed, closing the distance between them in seconds. Nadia barely dodged his first strike, a massive fist aimed at her head. She rolled to the side, her movements fluid and deliberate, her instincts kicking in like second nature. The audience gasped as Croth's punch hit the ground, sending a shockwave rippling through the arena. Nadia used the momentum of her dodge to push off the ground and sprint toward one of the elevated platforms. She needed higher ground to evaluate his attack patterns. Croth laughed, his voice booming. "Running already? I thought you humans were supposed to be clever. Nadia didn't respond. Her focus was on reaching the platform before Croth could close in again. But as she jumped, the platform shifted, the magnetic field beneath it altering its position. Nadia adjusted mid-air, grabbing onto the edge and pulling herself up in one fluid motion. She turned just in time to see Croth leap after her, his sheer size making the platform groan under his weight. You can't escape me, Croth growled, his forearms reaching for her. Nadia ducked and twisted, narrowly avoiding his grasp. She activated her combat gauntlets, twin devices on her wrists that emitted focused energy blasts. Aiming carefully, she fired at Croth's exposed side, the shots striking him but doing little more than pushing him back. He laughed again, brushing off the impact. Is that all you've got? Pathetic. But Nadia wasn't aiming to hurt him, yet. She fired again, this time at the magnetic field generator below the platform. The resulting explosion destabilized the structure, causing it to tilt. Croth stumbled, his massive frame struggling to find balance. Nadia seized the moment, leaping to another platform and putting more distance between them. The crowd roared, split between cheers and jeers. Nadia's quick thinking was earning her respect, but Croth's dominance was still undeniable. He recovered quickly, jumping down and charging at her again. His attacks were relentless, each strike forcing her to react faster, think sharper. Nadia's mind raced. She needed a way to exploit his overconfidence. Croth was strong, yes, but he was also predictable, relying on brute force to overwhelm his opponents. If she could bait him into making a mistake, she'd have a chance. As the chase continued, Nadia led Croth toward one of the energy pits. She feigned a stumble, slowing just enough to let him believe he had her cornered. His grin widened as he closed in, raising all four arms for a devastating blow. Nowhere to run, little cadet, he sneered, his eyes gleaming with triumph. But Nadia wasn't running. At the last possible moment, she dodged to the side, activating her gauntlets to release a concentrated burst of energy into the ground. The force propelled her backward, safely away from the pit, while Croth's momentum carried him forward. Too late, he realized the trap. His foot hit the edge, and with a roar of frustration, he toppled into the energy pit. The crowd erupted, their voices a cacophony of disbelief and exhilaration. Croth emerged seconds later, his shield temporarily deactivated, his pride clearly wounded. He glared at Nadia, his expression a mix of fury and newfound respect. You're clever, he admitted, his tone begrudging. But this is far from over. Nadia smirked, her stance steady. Good. I'd hate for it to be easy. The crowd buzzed with an electric mix of anticipation and disbelief as Croth climbed out of the energy pit, his shield still flickering as it recharged. His expression, once smug and overconfident, now carried a hint of irritation. He wasn't used to being outmaneuvered, much less by a human. Nadia stood a few meters away, her posture calm and deliberate, but her mind was racing. She knew Croth would take the fight more seriously now. His arrogance had cost him once, and he wouldn't make the same mistake again. Croth wasted no time. With a guttural roar, he slammed his fists into the ground, sending shockwaves rippling toward Nadia. The ground beneath her feet trembled violently, and she barely managed to leap onto a nearby platform to avoid being thrown off balance. The platform wobbled under her weight, but she steadied herself, her eyes locked on Croth. Impressive, Croth growled, his voice carrying over the roar of the crowd. But clever tricks won't save you forever. I'll show you why Cytherians are undefeated. He activated a control on his wristband, and the arena responded with a low hum. The environment began to shift, the platforms rearranged themselves, some rising higher while others sank into the ground. Energy pits disappeared, replaced by gravity wells that pulled objects toward them with an almost magnetic force. The air grew thick with the hum of machinery, and the stakes of the fight escalated. Nadia quickly recalibrated her HUD, scanning the new terrain. The gravity wells were a problem. If she got too close, they'd drag her in, and the constant shifting of platforms meant her escape routes were limited. Croft, on the other hand, seemed unaffected. His sheer strength and size allowed him to move through the arena with ease, leaping from platform to platform as though the shifting terrain were nothing more than a mild inconvenience. He charged at her again, faster and more aggressive than before. This time, Nadia didn't try to outrun him. Instead, she activated her gauntlets and fired a volley of energy blasts directly at his legs. The shots didn't penetrate his armor, but they succeeded in slowing him down, forcing him to adjust his approach. He snarled, frustration evident in his movements. "You're only delaying the inevitable," he shouted, swiping at her with all four arms. Nadia ducked under his attack, rolling to the side and using her momentum to leap onto another platform. But this time, Croft was ready. He grabbed the edge of the platform and yanked it downward, causing Nadia to lose her balance. She landed hard, the impact jarring her to the core. Croft was on her in an instant, his massive shadow looming over her. He swung one of his fists, but Nadia rolled out of the way just in time. The ground where she'd been moments ago cracked under the force of his punch. Nadia scrambled to her feet, her breathing ragged. She needed a new plan, and fast. It was clear that Croft's brute strength was overwhelming, but she noticed something else: he was expending a lot of energy. Every leap, every punch, every roar of frustration, it was all taking a toll on him. He wasn't used to prolonged fights. His strategy had always been to overpower his opponents quickly, and now that the fight was dragging on, he was starting to show signs of fatigue. She decided to use that to her advantage. "Is that the best you've got?" she called out, her voice sharp and taunting. "I thought Cytherians were supposed to be unstoppable." Croft's eyes narrowed, and he lunged at her again, his movements slightly less precise than before. Nadia dodged, leading him toward one of the gravity wells. She zigzagged across the arena, keeping just out of his reach, forcing him to chase her. The crowd watched in rapt attention, their cheers and jeers blending into a deafening roar. Finally, Nadia reached the edge of a gravity well and stopped, turning to face Croft. He slowed, his chest heaving as he glared at her. "Running won't save you, human," he growled, stepping closer. "I'm not running," Nadia replied, her voice calm but laced with determination. She activated her gauntlets, aiming them at the ground near the gravity well. The energy blasts destabilized the terrain, causing it to shift and crack. Croft hesitated, realizing too late that he'd walked into another trap. The ground beneath him gave way, and the pull of the gravity well intensified. Croft roared in frustration as he struggled to keep his footing. His massive frame made it difficult for him to resist the pull, and he sank to one knee, his hands clawing at the ground to keep himself from being dragged in. Nadia didn't wait for him to recover. She activated her gauntlets again, firing a concentrated burst of energy at the gravity well's control panel. The device overloaded, creating a localized shockwave that sent Croft tumbling backward. He landed hard, the impact reverberating through the arena. The crowd erupted into chaos, their voices a mix of shock and excitement. Nadia used the opportunity to put some distance between herself and Croft, climbing onto another platform to reassess the situation. Croft was down but not out. His shield had reactivated, and his movements, while slower, were still powerful. She couldn't let her guard down. Croft rose to his feet, his expression a mix of anger and grudging respect. "You're more resourceful than I expected," he admitted, his voice low and dangerous. "But this ends now." He activated another control on his wristband, and the arena shifted again. This time, the platforms began to spin, creating a disorienting effect. Gravity wells appeared and disappeared at random, and the lighting dimmed, making it harder to see. Croft's strategy was clear: he was trying to disorient her, to force her into making a mistake. Nadia took a deep breath, her mind racing as she analyzed the new terrain. The spinning platforms were unpredictable, but they also provided an opportunity. If she timed her movements correctly, she could use the momentum to her advantage. Croft charged at her again, his movements slower but still powerful. Nadia leaped onto a spinning platform, using its momentum to propel herself toward another. She moved with precision, her training kicking in as she navigated the chaotic arena. Croft tried to follow, but his larger size made it difficult for him to keep up. As Nadia reached the highest platform, she turned to face Croft. He was climbing toward her, his multiple arms giving him an advantage as he pulled himself upward. But Nadia had one more trick up her sleeve. She activated her gauntlets, charging them to their maximum capacity. The energy crackled around her hands, illuminating her face as she prepared for one final strike. Croft reached the platform, his eyes blazing with determination. "It's over," he growled, lunging at her. Nadia waited until the last possible moment, then released the energy in a focused blast aimed directly at Croft's chest. The force of the impact sent him tumbling backward, and he fell, landing hard on the ground below. His shield flickered and died, and for the first time, he looked genuinely defeated. The crowd erupted into chaos once again, their voices a mix of disbelief and awe. Nadia stood on the platform, her chest heaving as she caught her breath. The fight wasn't over yet, but for the first time, she felt the tide turning in her favor. The crowd's energy surged as Croft slowly rose from the ground, his imposing figure casting long shadows in the dim light of the arena. His shield was down, his movements slower, but his determination remained unwavering. The Zytherian warrior was not one to concede defeat, and the tension in the air thickened as the combatants locked eyes across the battlefield. This was the moment the crowd had been waiting for, the climactic confrontation between brute strength and human ingenuity. Croft's voice boomed through the arena, his tone laced with both fury and grudging respect. "You've pushed me farther than anyone ever has, human. But now, I fight without restraint. Prepare yourself." Nadia remained silent, her gaze steady and unwavering. She could feel the fatigue in her muscles, the weight of every dodge, every leap, every calculated strike. But she couldn't afford to show weakness. This wasn't just a fight, it was a statement. Humanity's place among the stars depended on the outcome of this battle. The arena hummed as Croft activated a hidden mechanism on his wristband. The ground beneath them began to shift and split, revealing new hazards. Spikes emerged from the floor, energy barriers crackled to life, and the platforms spun faster, creating a chaotic and dangerous environment. The audience gasped in awe and fear as the arena transformed into a deadly maze, designed to test even the most skilled fighters. Nadia quickly recalibrated her HUD, her visor feeding her data on the new layout. Every step now carried the risk of impalement or electrocution, and the spinning platforms made navigation even more treacherous. She had to think faster, move smarter, and anticipate Croft's every move. Croft charged again, his massive frame barreling through the shifting obstacles with sheer brute force. Sparks flew as he slammed through an energy barrier, ignoring the damage it inflicted. Nadia barely had time to react as he closed the distance between them, his four arms swinging in a coordinated assault. She ducked, rolled, and countered with her gauntlets, but Croft adapted quickly, using his lower arms to block her strikes while his upper arms aimed for her torso. The two clashed in a flurry of movement, their battle a blur of energy blasts, powerful strikes, and near misses. Croft's size and strength gave him the advantage in close combat, but Nadia's agility and precision kept her just out of his reach. She danced around him, her movements fluid and deliberate, looking for an opening. As they fought, Croft's frustration grew. He roared, slamming his fists into the ground, sending shockwaves that destabilized the surrounding platforms. Nadia leaped to another platform just as the one beneath her crumbled, her heart pounding as she narrowly avoided falling into the spikes below. She landed hard, her knees buckling, but she forced herself to keep moving. Croft followed, his massive leaps closing the gap between them. Nadia could see the strain in his movements now, the slight hesitation in his attacks. He was tiring, his earlier confidence replaced with grim determination. But she couldn't let her guard down. A single mistake could end the fight and her life. She led him toward one of the arena's energy barriers, calculating her next move. As Croft lunged at her, she activated her gauntlets and fired a concentrated blast at the barrier's control panel. The barrier flickered, then surged with a burst of energy, catching Croft mid-strike. He roared in pain as the energy coursed through him, momentarily immobilizing him. Nadia seized the opportunity, launching herself onto a higher platform to gain a better vantage point. From above, she could see the layout of the arena more clearly, identifying potential weaknesses in Croft's approach. But her reprieve was short-lived. Croft recovered quickly, his resilience unmatched. He snarled, leaping toward her with a ferocity that shook the platform. "You think you can outlast me?" he growled, his voice a mix of anger and admiration. "You're strong, human, but strength alone won't save you." Nadia didn't respond. She focused on the platform's shifting motion, timing her next move with precision. As Croft landed, she activated her gauntlets and fired at the platform's support beams. The structure groaned under the strain, and with a deafening crack, it began to collapse. Croft leaped to another platform just in time, but Nadia was already on the move. She darted across the arena, using the chaos to her advantage. She knew she couldn't defeat Croft through strength alone. She had to outthink him, to use the arena's hazards against him. Her HUD beeped, alerting her to a power surge in one of the gravity wells. An idea formed in her mind, risky but potentially decisive. She lured Croft toward the well, weaving through the maze of spikes and barriers. The crowd watched in stunned silence, the tension palpable as the two combatants closed in on the gravitational anomaly. Croft lunged at her, his fists crashing down inches from her head. Nadia rolled to the side, her movements growing more desperate as the fight dragged on. She could feel her strength waning, her body screaming for rest. But she couldn't stop, not now. She reached the edge of the gravity well and turned to face Croft. He paused, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the situation. He knew it was a trap, but his pride wouldn't allow him to back down. "This ends here," he growled, stepping closer. Nadia activated her gauntlets, charging them to their maximum capacity. The energy crackled and hissed, illuminating her face as she prepared for the final strike. She aimed not at Croft, but at the ground beneath him, destabilizing the terrain further. The gravity well's pull intensified, and Croft staggered, his massive frame struggling against the force. With a roar of defiance, Croft charged at her, his movements slower but no less dangerous. Nadia waited until the last possible moment, then leaped to safety, firing one final blast at the gravity well's control panel. The resulting explosion created a shockwave that engulfed Croft, pulling him into the anomaly's core. The crowd erupted in a mix of cheers and gasps as Croft disappeared into the gravity well, his roars fading into silence. The arena fell still, the chaotic environment slowly stabilizing. Nadia stood at the edge, her chest heaving as she caught her breath. The fight was over, but the tension lingered, the echoes of their battle resonating through the air. For a moment, all was silent. Then the arena AI's voice rang out, clear and decisive. "Winner, Lieutenant Nadia Crane." The crowd exploded into applause, their cheers deafening as they celebrated her victory. Nadia stood tall, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten as she raised her head high. She had done it. Against all odds, she had proven that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. But the battle wasn't just a triumph for her, it was a message to the galaxy that humans would not be underestimated. The cheers of the crowd echoed in Nadia's ears as she stood at the edge of the arena, her body trembling from exertion. The adrenaline coursing through her veins was the only thing keeping her upright. Every muscle ached, her lungs burned, and her vision swam with exhaustion, but she forced herself to remain composed. She couldn't falter now, not in front of thousands of spectators. This victory was bigger than her, it was for humanity. The gravity well hummed ominously behind her, its pull destabilizing as Croft's massive form was consumed by its force. For a moment, she thought it was over. But then the well's energy flickered, and the ground beneath it cracked open. A deep, guttural roar erupted from within, silencing the crowd. The arena held its collective breath as Croft emerged, battered and weakened but still standing. His metallic blue skin was scorched in places, and his multiple eyes flickered with a mix of rage and resolve. The force of the gravity well had stripped away much of his armor, leaving his movements sluggish, yet he remained defiant. "You have fought well, human," Croft growled, his voice strained but no less menacing. But I am not defeated. The crowd gasped in unison, their excitement giving way to shock. Nadia's heart sank. She had given everything she had, used every ounce of her training and creativity, yet here he was, refusing to fall. She clenched her fists, her gauntlets sparking weakly. The energy reserves were nearly depleted, and her body felt like it could collapse at any moment. But Croft's defiance wasn't her only challenge. The arena itself began to quake, its unstable systems reacting to the damage caused during their battle. Sparks flew from the energy barriers, platforms shifted erratically, and the gravity wells began to destabilize further. The fight had pushed the arena to its limits, and now it was falling apart. The AI's voice crackled through the chaos, its normally calm tone tinged with urgency. Warning, structural integrity compromised. All combatants and spectators must evacuate immediately. Panic rippled through the crowd as spectators scrambled for the exits. Instructors and arena staff barked orders, trying to maintain order amidst the chaos. But Nadia couldn't leave, not yet. Croft wasn't just a rival now, he was a danger to everyone in the arena. If she didn't end this, his rampage could cause untold destruction. Croft staggered forward, his massive form swaying as the arena quaked beneath him. Despite his injuries, his determination was unshaken. "I will not yield," he snarled, his voice carrying over the noise. "Cytherians do not lose." Nadia took a deep breath, forcing her body to move. She couldn't rely on brute force anymore, her gauntlets were nearly out of power, and her strength was fading fast. She needed to end this decisively, and creatively. Her eyes darted around the arena, searching for anything she could use. Then she saw it, the central control pillar, a towering structure that regulated the arena's environmental systems. It was unstable, sparks flying from its base as the ground cracked beneath it. If she could overload it, the resulting energy surge might be enough to incapacitate Croft for good. Nadia leaped onto a nearby platform, her movements shaky but determined. Croft followed, his heavy footsteps shaking the already unstable structure. She led him closer to the control pillar, weaving through the chaos as the arena continued to collapse around them. "You can't run forever." Croft roared, his voice echoing through the arena. "I'm not running," Nadia shot back, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. She reached the control pillar and slammed her gauntlets into its base. Sparks flew as she channeled the last remnants of energy into the pillar, overriding its safety protocols. The structure groaned ominously, its circuits sparking wildly as it began to overload. Croft charged at her, his four arms reaching for her in a final, desperate attempt to end the fight. Nadia dodged at the last second, leaping onto a nearby platform as the control pillar erupted in a blinding explosion of light and energy. The shockwave engulfed the arena, knocking both combatants off their feet. Nadia hit the ground hard, the impact jarring every bone in her body. She struggled to her knees, her vision blurred, as the smoke cleared. Croft lay sprawled on the ground, his massive form unmoving. The explosion had finally taken its toll, his body too battered to continue. The crowd, those who had remained to watch despite the chaos, erupted into cheers once more. Nadia forced herself to her feet, her legs shaking as she approached Croft. She half expected him to rise again, but he remained still, his chest heaving with labored breaths. His multiple eyes flickered weakly as he looked up at her. "You are strong," Croft admitted, his voice barely audible. "Stronger than I believed." Nadia nodded, her exhaustion evident in every movement. "And you're relentless. But this fight is over." Croft closed his eyes, his body finally succumbing to its injuries. The arena AI's voice crackled to life again, announcing the official end of the battle. "Winner, Lieutenant Nadia Crane." The remaining spectators erupted into applause, their cheers a mix of awe and admiration. Nadia turned to face them, her head held high despite her exhaustion. She had won, but more importantly, she had proven that humanity could stand against even the most powerful adversaries. As the arena staff rushed in to stabilize the environment and tend to the injured, Commander Elias Varn approached Nadia, his expression a mix of pride and concern. "You did it," he said, his voice low. You've done more than just win a fight, Lieutenant. You've made history. Nadia managed a small smile, though her exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. Thank you, sir. But I couldn't have done it alone. Humanity's strength is in our determination, our creativity, and our ability to adapt. Varn nodded, placing a hand on her shoulder. Take pride in what you've accomplished today. The galaxy won't forget this. As the arena lights dimmed and the crowd slowly dispersed, Nadia allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. She had faced one of the greatest challenges of her life and emerged victorious, not just for herself, but for humanity. And while the scars of the battle would remain, so too would the lessons she had learned, that strength isn't just about power, it's about resilience, resourcefulness, and the courage to stand tall in the face of impossible odds. With one last look at the arena, she turned and walked away, her head held high, ready to face whatever challenges the stars had in store.